That's the biggest lesson you've got to learn about this bike. As it hits the chunk, it just doesn't slow down. My name's GuyK. I've been a professional bike and kit tester for nearly 25 years. And today, this is my final roundup review on one of the most fascinating, exciting and intriguing bikes I've ever tested. The Forbidden Druid. So, I'm up on stage 1 of the Ard Rock Enduro. These courses that you can only ride during the event, so do not ask where they are. Get yourself signed up for the Ard Rock Enduro event next year and you will ride some of the most fantastic technical trails in the UK. But they are one-off for the event. I've got special permission to film on them. Don't come up here and try and poach these trails. It'll end in a world of trouble. So, sermon over. Let's dig into why this Forbidden is so special. And the reason this bike is so fascinating and why it creates so many questions every time I bring it out is what Forbidden called the Trifecta System, which is their high pivot idler design. So rather than the chain going straight back from here to the rear cassette, it goes up over this idler pulley and then down to the cassette. And what that does is it puts the suspension pivot just in front of the drive pivot. So as the suspension compresses, the rear wheel swings back 27 mil, whereas most bikes pretty much go straight up and down or curve back inwards. That linkage opens up there, and the best way I can think of explaining what that means in terms of how it reacts to a rock is if the rock's coming in like that, if your suspension is mostly moving up like that, there's a real impact. But if your suspension's swinging backwards, there, it's like catching a cricket ball. The back end moves with the force of the shock, so it naturally dissipates the shock better, gives the bike more time to absorb it, so the bike carries on with more forward momentum. But because it's rotating around that point, there's very, very little movement in terms of the chain length. That distance there barely changes at all. So crank arm angle hardly changes, even as it goes all the way through that 130 mil of travel. And that means you don't get the horrendous pedal kickback you otherwise would with this kind of super rearward axle path. But as Forbidden have taken the decision not to put the idler wheel right on the pivot point, because they deliberately still wanted to keep a bit of anti-squat, because you need something in there to kind of counteract the weight movement of your legs and stop it bobbing. And it's an extremely stable bike under pedaling. So very rare that you have to use this two-position compression lever on the DPX2 shock, and it's a relatively firm tune on there as well. And what that means, when you're just powering along, it feels like a short travel, really positive, aggressive trail bike. But then when you start hitting drops and blocks, well, that's when that high pivot really comes into its own. Just the way it reacts to square edges, it's just insane, because that rear wheel can just drop clean out of the way. It actually moves from 9 mil to 27 mil as it hits the chunk, so it just doesn't slow down. That's the biggest lesson you've got to learn about this bike. The chunkiest, nastiest, speed-killing sections are where this Druid actually accelerates, where it really shows how that high pivot suspension works. And that's why it's become so popular and dominant in downhill. Alright lads, cheers. Just because for 130 mil, this bike hits square edges like you would not believe, and drops as well. So a proper license to get Larry for only 130 mil of travel. Just the feel of this back end is insane. It makes the front fork work so hard. And I've never ridden a bike that's had more kind of astonished reactions from people I've lent it to. And I'm talking about properly cynical bike testers and bike geeks. I've just been blown away by the combination of pedaling and then that suspension absorption that this high pivot gives. And of course it's not unique now. It's been out a few years, and even then there were trail bikes with high pivot before that, and a long history of high pivot downhill bikes all the way back to Balfour and stuff in the 90s. But Forbidden were the first people to package it in this really lovely, tight handling, beautifully curated trail travel chassis. And it really is amazing the way it carries speed through chunk like that. Unreal for 130mm. And you could argue that, yeah, well, why bother having a 130mm high pivot bike? Why not just get 150mm bike, match the fork up? You know, wouldn't feel that much different, but it would, because it's the way it. Oh, that's obviously going to be a jumping race day. It's the way it copes with those big flat face obstacles, but it's so unique. Well, that's what makes this Druid stand out. And I know Al from MBR would prefer it if it had a more open compression tube. I can see where he's getting out with that. It is possibly chattier than it might be on but personally I like the fact it's got a bit of bite to it. You can really get a sense of what you're driving through. Woo! Lands so beautifully. But as Forbidden have taken the decision not to put the idler wheel right on the pivot point, because they deliberately still wanted to keep a bit of anti-squat in the system there to kind of counteract the weight movement of your legs and stop it bobbing. And it's an extremely stable bike under pedaling, so very rare that you have to use this two-position compression lever on the DPX2 shock, and it's a relatively firm tune on there as well. So one of the things that surprised me most was just how well it did pedal. There is some drag from the idler and that E13 skid device, but to be honest I reckon there's more drag from that DHR that comes stock. There is a slight disconnect caused by the pulley, which means that your feet aren't feeling what the back wheel is feeling at the same time, which takes some getting used to. But the wheel's just free to roll up and over, even if you get the line wrong or the blocks get seriously big. And that traction and wheel flow means even when you want the bike to give up gripping, it just won't. And you've got a reasonably steep seat angle, so you're in a good position for grip. In terms of poise, 75.5 degrees. It's not crazy steep, you still have to slide forward a bit, but it's the fact that you can just keep on winding that power through whatever the back wheel is doing. That's what really makes the difference on technical climbs, whether you're crawling towards the summit or blasting something a lot quicker. And while the Trifecta system is obviously the big deal here in terms of the suspension behaviour, the frame design is just beautifully packaged as well. You've got custom stainless steel bolts for your, you know, your enduro packaging. You've got stainless steel bottle bolts there. You've got really neat clamped internal cable routing, so that's super quiet. You've got this extended kind of Soviet sub conning tower, just keeps the top tube really low, keeps the centre of gravity low, having the shock down there as well, because I mean BB bike height's 340mm, so, and obviously, you know, because it tends to go backwards rather than upwards in terms of wheel path, it stays relatively high as well, but the fact it lengthens really makes it squat and grip through corners. You press down into the shock and it just rails like an absolute, it's like, sticks like a slug on a dog bowl, it really does. Having ridden it, I mean, I've ridden this for months now, and you know, you can see the chain's a bit dirty, but the idler's still good. Pivots I haven't had any trouble with. You know, I've checked them for tightness a few times, but absolutely rock solid. The shock is pretty well protected in this tunnel. It can maybe do with a slightly longer fender on the back there, but you know, to completely keep it clear of spray. And it's relatively hard. It's relatively hard to check your sag in there. You know, you have to have a good peer inside the tunnel to check how it's going on. And in here, you can see the twin linkages that set up the whole suspension kinematic. So this is fitted with the 29er linkage But you can also get a Ziggy link, and that makes the bike mullet compatible. So, and actually, the first time I rode it, I'll probably put some clips in from that video as well. I rode it in mullet, and in some ways the handling is more sorted, because you know it's slacker, it's a little bit lower, and because it's got a smaller back wheel on the back, it doesn't tend to overwhelm that 150mm travel on the front, which sounds daft because you've only got 130mm at the back. But with a 29er on, there's a proper difference. You know, that fork takes an absolute beating on the front, which is saying something, because it's a full performance elite Grip 2 damper Fox 36, but it really struggles to try and keep up with what that DPX2 and specifically that high pivot Trifecta system are doing on the back. So it actually feels more balanced in terms of impact, and it's a little bit more agile with the Ziggy link in and a mullet back wheel, 27.5 back wheel. But personally, I really like the rolling, I really like the grip, and just the rollover of that 29er. So that's mostly how I've been running it. But a lot of Forbidden Druid buyers now are going for that mullet as standard. And there is a new mullet Ziggy link option as a complete build as well. Before it was an upgrade, now it's a complete build. And again, just, you know, the tyre spec on this, GuyK 2.5 up front, 3C, Max Terra. You know, super grippy, super dependable tyre, just to, you know, emphasise the amount of control and grip that this has got. And then 3C Max Terra Minion DHR on the back. But to be honest, I've not run it with that much, because I don't need that much grip when it's combined with this system. So I've been running semi-slicks on the back. Oh yeah, it's that grippy. And other features, it's really well sorted, Shimano XT build, race face, Arc 30 offset wheels, DT Swiss, 350 hubs, just all properly solid kit. So although the frame's, you know, properly premium piece of kit built by one of the best factories in Asia, and you know, it has got all this beautiful detailing, like stainless steel bolts, they stay bright, there's no corrosion. There's even a little storage box underneath. It's not as big as a Specialized SWAT or anything like that, but you know, there's room for a little bit of gear in there. The whole bike is just put together so beautifully, and that's how it feels when you ride it. It's just really, really tight together. It's not for everyone. There is a bit more complexity. Oh, and before everyone goes on about needing extra chain lengths, for a start, Shimano are now making their chains longer. So even on an XL, which needs the longest chain because the back ends are proportional, so it goes from 414 on the small up to 436 on the XL. Even the XL now doesn't need any extra chain links if you get the longest Shimano chain, and SRAM will be bringing out e-bike chains shortly, because e-bikes tend to be longer at the back, so they'll have extra links in as well. But even if you do have to buy two chains, you know, you only buy it once, don't you? And I'm sure most shops will have some spare links sat about that you can scrounge off them. And in terms of other admin, it weighs 13.67 kilos in this large without pedals, and it comes in 5 sizes and 2 colours. And you also get a really, really nice care package with the bike. You get this digital shock pump, and you get a ratchet driver there with torque meters on it as well, so you're not going to overload any of your bolts when you're putting it together. So yeah, you're paying a premium price for the bike, but you're getting really, really nice kit that makes you feel like you've made the right choice and properly treated yourself. And this is the Ziggy link, which if you can buy it as an upgrade if your bike comes as a 29er or standard, or like I say, there are bikes now coming with the Ziggy link as standard if you want to go mullet straight away. And the geometry is designed to match that tight, agile trail feel as well. So 65.6 head angle, 75.6 seat angle on twin 29er, 465mm for each, and then the back end is proportional, so small bikes get a 414 right through to 450 on the extra large bikes. And of course, the way the back end moves backwards also shifts the dynamic center of the bike backwards as it compresses, so this thing hugs the corners and grips like you wouldn't believe. Unreal stiction. And then of course you've got that option to fit a Ziggy link and get it 27.5 at the back for even more agility, slightly lower, slightly slacker, and a faster reacting rear end. And because of that high pivot idler, meaning the relationship between the chain and the cassette doesn't change throughout the stroke. That means as soon as you put the power down, you're instantly engaging. Well, as soon as that DT Swiss rear hub picks up, that is a little slow, but you're never wallowing or having to correct your pedal stroke because the back wheel's in a weird place. It does take some adjusting those changes in the dynamic sensor as you crush it down, and that kind of lack of pedal pickup, but at the same time a constant reference connection. There's a lot going on that's different. It's just that constant connection means you can just keep on the attack, keep driving whatever the rear end's doing, and that is just crazy liberating to ride with. Thanks to Forbidden, I've had this bike for 4 months now, and the bottom line is it's my go-to weapon whenever I want to go faster over techie stuff than I have any right to, but still have a properly punchy, playful, enjoyable, short travel trail bike. It really is iPivot witchcraft, and while there's plenty of people joining that magic circle now, this is a proper originator. Absolutely outstanding. So there you go. I hope that's made sense, the way I've kind of described this bike. You know, all these analogies about catching cricket balls and stuff like that. I hope that's tried to bring it across, and just the rider review will hopefully have illustrated just how much speed this bike can carry through big chunky terrain for a short travel bike. And yeah, like I say, you know, you could just get a bigger travel bike with a conventional setup and it would feel similar, but it would not feel the same as this bike. This really is something very, very special, and I have loved having 4 months to properly get my head around it, and I've loved it. I've ridden this so much, which is rare for a test bike. Normally I'm like, yeah, got it, right, move on. You know, that's my business, testing as many bikes as I can. But I've just been riding this for pleasure over and over again. You know, it's had numerous bits of kit chucked on it and chucked off it just because I wanted to ride the bike. And I think that's about the best thing I can say with it, really. It is a properly distinctive, addictive, wonderful, skill-boosting, ego-flattering ripper. I mean, it really is something special. So massive thanks to Forbidden for letting me to hang on to the bike for this long. Massive thanks to Giro for sponsoring the channel, and PEs and Crud and DMR, and thanks to the guys. I'm wearing Can't Quit Cartel because I always like to flash a bit of Can't Quit Cartel at Ard Rock. Thanks to Joe and the Ard Rock team for letting me use the course today before it's been opened. That's a real bonus. Massive thanks to my Patreon subscribers as well for supporting the channel. If you really like what I'm doing on the channel, please consider joining them. You get exclusive, early, extended, ad-free edits as a thank you. And if you're an investor, which is $10 a month, you get your name scrolling up with these guys here. So massive thanks to everyone who's been involved in this video, and thanks to you guys for watching this far. Thanks to you for subscribing, clicking for notifications so you know when the next video comes out, and to just tell your mates about it. I'm going to spend the rest of the weekend racing, and I'll be bringing some other bikes from these trails as well, so look out for plenty of edits coming from Ard Rock. But for now, I've been GuyK, and I've been lucky enough to ride the fantastic Forbidden Druid for the past 4 months, and I think it's one of the most outstanding, charismatic and kick-ass fast trail bikes I've ever ridden.